When you hear that you're conceived in rape, you think, this is an accident. This is something that wasn't meant to be. My adopted mom was 50 years old when I was born. She had tragedy in her past. She had lost 4 of her 5 children in an accident. And here this little baby girl was placed in her arms. My adopted mom worked all the time. So I'd get home from school and it would just be me and my dad. Well, him and I were pals. I was his daddy's little girl. They were the only parents I really knew. And I didn't know who my real parents were. I couldn't remember, even though I had been with them up until about the age of 2. And so I remember asking and crying and pleading with them, please tell me who they are, I want to know. They kept wanting to wait, but they said, well, if you want to know, we'll tell you. It was a man by the name of Gail who was mentally handicapped and had about a 12-year-old IQ, and a woman by the name of Margaret who was schizophrenic. So then it all made sense. I understood why my birth parents weren't able to care for me. And my parents explained how they didn't know how to do the bottles or they couldn't change my pants, and how Margaret had come and actually lived in their house to try to care for me. And so I went through my entire childhood knowing that these mentally handicapped, mentally ill people were my parents. I probably always saw my birth parents as disadvantaged. As I grew up and experienced bigger city life, and I would see people on the side of the road, or especially a lot of homeless people are mentally ill. I began doing fundraisers for the homeless shelter, women in crisis and pregnancy. I've started a nonprofit to help people before they get into a situation where they find themselves homeless. And I always thought that could be me. I could be living in a shack. I could be living without much. The reality is I come from the least of these. I began writing Margaret letters, and I would stop and visit them occasionally and visit Gail in the hospital if he was ever ill. They gave me life, and I was happy to be alive. And it wasn't until Gail actually passed away and I called his cousins, and she was like, well, Mary, you know that he's not your real father, right? On her way home from work one night, Margaret, she was raped. And I remember standing here in the kitchen. I just found out that I had been the product of rape. Gail was quite upset when it happened. The police were involved. Nothing ever came of the investigation. And Gail, because he wanted to save her honor and to not make me feel like I was different or something bad had happened, had always claimed me as his child. A lot of times people say that we need to abort children who have been conceived from rape because it's the rapist's baby. I think about my life. I think about me now when I hear those stories. And I spent so much of my time trying to hide that part of my life, and now I realize that there's nothing to be ashamed about. I don't deserve death. My children deserve to be alive. I deserve to be alive. For what my birth mother had to endure for 9 months because of one tragic night has given us a life. I wouldn't be here. My children wouldn't be here. All the lives that I've affected would be different.